بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah ta'ala, we're on page 141 of our text, and inshallah we will continue. Lillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala. All right, let us begin, inshallah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Your voice is very low.
Is this better?
Yes, ma'am.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, said, in this passage, Ibn Taymiyyah was objecting to those who believed in oneness of being, but he was not good at forcing them to accept the corrupt implications of their belief. Instead, he sufficed with fallacious reasoning and ascribed to them beliefs that they do not have. Because of this fact, you will find that when they hear these words, they reply, "These are the words of a common person or ignoramus who does not know the reality of our position. How can he refute us? How can it refute us? His words are ineffectual against them despite
Do you
want me to read it again?
Yeah.
These are the words of a common person or ignoramus who does not know the reality of our position. How can it refute us?
How can he refute us?
It says it, sorry. How can he? Typo, I guess.
Yeah.
His words are ineffectual against them despite the falsity of their position. Falsehood cannot be refuted with falsehood. Rather, falsehood must be refuted by truth, which Ibn Taymiyyah was not skilled at.
And they another way, they say you cannot purify najasa with urine. That's a stronger way of saying that. They say you cannot purify najasa, Islamic filth, with urine. Rather, you need pure water. So something may be false, you can't refute it with falsehood. You have to clarify it with the truth. Naam.
Ibn Taymiyyah's most conspicuous error in this regard was ascribing to them the belief that the existence of creation is the essence of the existence of the Creator. This statement, in the context in which Ibn Taymiyyah said it, gives the impression that they affirm the existence of creation in the first place. In reality, however, they negate the existence of creation and affirm only the existence of the Creator. According to them, creation is non-existent, merely ascriptions and relative frames of reference subsisting with Allah Ta'ala. Speaking against union and indwelling does not refute those who believe in the oneness of being, as is known, because union and indwelling are predicated upon the belief in multiplicity in existence. But they believe in oneness, not multiplicity. So as far as they are concerned, creation is non-existent. Likewise, they do not believe in homonymy because homonymy is based on multiplicity of extensions and a variance in realities. As our existence as a univocal, something predicated on different existences in a single sense, it is based on likeness in realities and quiddities along with the multiplicity of extensions. But as we know, those who profess belief in oneness of being do not believe in the multiplicity of external extensions. So how can it be said that they believe in homonymy of univocal predication? Rather, the sharing they affirm is sharing in instance, not sharing in reality, because the validity of sharing is conditioned upon multiplicity from some angle. However, he is, according to them, complete oneness, and so existence is his in expression, meaning, and instance. Those who profess belief in oneness of being do not term creation as existent, neither do they say that creation takes on the meaning of existence, nor that it implies to it. As such, according to them, creation has no existence. This is the verified position concerning the doctrine of the oneness of being from this angle. The truth of the matter is not as Ibn Taymiyyah made it seem with his comments. As you can see, Ibn Taymiyyah demanded that they distinguish between specific oneness and generic oneness. What he meant was that the source of their error lay in their understanding of sharing in the term existence.
Mhm.
Based on this sharing, Ibn Taymiyyah argued that they professed that existence is one externally, meaning there is not but a single existence externally. Ibn Taymiyyah considered this an error, but he did not oppose their understanding of sharing in existence. But it is univocal between Allah Ta'ala's existence and the existence of creation, thus a single reality, with the reality of Allah Ta'ala's existence being the same as the reality of creation's existence in meaning. Where Ibn Taymiyyah opposed them is in their belief that from this it follows that there is a single existence externally. Rather, Ibn Taymiyyah would argue that external existences have a single reality, but they are a multitude of entities, determinations, and forms. This is what Ibn Taymiyyah meant when he distinguished between specific oneness and generic oneness. In his view, the existence of Allah Ta'ala and the existence of creation is one generically, but a multiplicity of individual existences. What this means, as should be clear to the readers, is that the reality of Allah Ta'ala's existence shares with the reality of creation's existence in a generic sense. As you can
And
see,
this here is the error of Ibn Taymiyyah, that you have some kind of resemblance, even if the resemblance doesn't share the same reality. And this is an error.
as you can see, this is a foundation of Ibn Taymiyyah's doctrine of resemblance. We mentioned earlier that the sharing in existence between Allah Ta'ala
Let
and
me go back
creation.
to this, and I didn't express much on this subject of wahdatul wujud, because it has a lot of details to it, and there's a lot of things behind it that we'll discuss later, inshallah. Or oneness of being, this concept. There's a lot of details to it that is not the time to discuss it here. What we're focusing on here is this type of resemblance that Ibn Taymiyyah claimed. That's the focal point of what we're discussing. Go ahead.
As we mentioned earlier, that the sharing in existence between Allah Ta'ala and creation is only in homonymy, a sharing in incidental secondary meanings that rise from primary meanings that apply externally. This form of sharing does not result in professing a generic oneness, neither mentally nor externally. This is the foundation of the doctrine of divine transcendence. Ibn Taymiyyah's remarks about specific oneness and generic oneness were not uttered out of forgetfulness or said haphazardly or unintentionally. Instead, they formed a major foundation over which he built many of the larger points in his doctrine. Based on this view, Ibn Taymiyyah developed his arguments concerning the divine attributes, his belief in the existence of contingent things in the divine entity, his belief that Allah Ta'ala's speech consists of letters and sounds that subsist within the divine entity, his belief in the generic infinite regress of contingents, his belief in the generic
Contingent by kind. So in other words, Ibn Taymiyyah believed that there are created things that have no beginning, right? And he believed that the world was eternal without a beginning by kind, not elements. All of those things came from his concept of shared resemblance between the creator and the creation.
his belief in the generic externality of the universe, and more. We have detailed these beliefs at length in Al-Kashif al-Saghir, as-Saghir. As for the second group Ibn Taymiyyah opposed, he said about them, others fancy that if it is said existence share in the term existence, it implies resemblance and compositeness. As a result, they maintained that the term existence is a homonymy, and in doing so, they went against what the people of intellect in their various groupings have agreed upon, notwithstanding the fact that existence is divided into pre-eternal existence and contingent existence. Another group thought that if existence share in the term existence, it implies that externally there is an existent that shares with it. They claimed that outside of the mind there are absolute universals, like absolute being, an absolute animal, an absolute body, and so on. They have opposed sense perception, intellect, and the law, and made what exists in the mind into a concrete external reality. All of this is a form of confusion. Because all of the theologians negated the notion of universal external existences, and because our objective here is to refute Ibn Taymiyyah's fallacious arguments against Ahl Sunnah, the Ash'aris in particular, there is no need for us to involve ourselves with Ibn Taymiyyah concerning this second group. None of the Ash'aris have ever professed belief in the external existence of universals, so we will spare ourselves the effort of arguing it here. We must, however, bring to attention a clear error Ibn Taymiyyah fell into when discussing them. He said that they made what exists in the mind into a concrete external reality. His statement indicates that they affirmed a purely mental existence as an actual existence in the external world. This is incorrect. According to this group, it is not that an actual existence in the external world is the same as the mental existence of something. Rather, the actual existent corresponds to what is in the mind. Therefore, according to them, if the mental concept is a universal, its external referent will be a universal, not as Ibn Taymiyyah claimed about them. As for the first group who said that existence is a homonymy, it is famously attributed to Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari and Abu al-Hussein al-Basri. Although earlier in this work we explained what Imam al-Ash'ari meant, here we want here we want to offer here we want to offer more details. Here we want to offer more details. Al-Ash'ari conceded that for
More
existence
details meaning we want to increase in its explanation. Yes.
Al-Ash'ari conceded that for existence there is a word and meaning indicating it, as well as an external referent to which it applies. In his view, the mental meanings applied to it and did not correspond to them externally. For this reason, when we say that Allah Ta'ala exists and that Zayd exists, the ascription of existence to Allah Ta'ala is not the same as the ascription of existence to Zayd in the external referent.
Right, because when we talk about the existence of Zayd, we're talking about a created entity. When we're talking about the existence of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, we're talking about a non-created entity. And even though the word is shared, existent, but the meanings that are contained by the word existent related to each thing is completely dissimilar. And in no way do they resemble. Is this point clear to everyone? Because sometimes, unfortunately, because of the Wahhabi spread of books, we seem to have a problem with this. That this type of resemblance has become something that's been pushed on us that we actually don't realize that we keep likening Allah to his creation. That's why we'll say Allah got hands and feet. People will say, when I say we, people among us will say Allah got hands and Allah got feet and Allah moves and Allah is in a place. Because they have this concept of partial resemblance. So when we're talking about Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, do we clearly understand that the words that may be used, right? The words that may be used, even though the words share the same wording, that the meaning is completely different. Nothing that you can imagine in meaning is equal to that meaning. So 2 questions. Anyone is welcome to the class. They're welcome to come. If they're unnecessarily disruptive, I'll remove them. Not because they ask a question. If they're not unnecessarily disruptive, they're welcome. If they're disruptive, I'll remove them. So the door is open. Is to a manner befitting to Allah appropriate to say? Depends what you mean by that. If you mean by that in the meaning Allah intended, and it is totally dissimilar to any meanings of created things, it's befitting. Yes. If not, no. Go ahead. So I just wanted to make sure that's clear. Go ahead.
Of course, it is true that this is the ruling of sharing as a term or what applies to it. However, that does not necessitate that they share in an external reality, as the believers in oneness of being said,
So in other
nor does that
words,
necessitate them sharing in a generic reality under which are subsumed many different external individuals, as Ibn Taymiyyah said. Thus, there is no generic sharing between Allah Ta'ala's existence and the creation's existence. What this means is that there is no higher universal meaning shared by Allah Ta'ala and His creation after which each is distinguished from the other, since that is the exact resemblance rejected by Imam al-Ashari, then requires that the Creator is composed of qualities He shares with others and qualities He is distinguished by, which necessitates that He is contingent. This is why Imam al-Ashari only adopted the view that existence is a homonymy. In other words, there is no real sharing, either externally or mentally, between Allah Ta'ala and creation. At the same time, al-Ashari validated describing both creator and created with existence from the realm of sharing in secondary incidental qualities, which are secondary mental associations after the real and affirmed meanings. This is homonymy according to him. Because of this, he was safe from the implications of resemblance and then being cast onto his school, and was safe from the famous aversions the people of intellect had to applying the name being to Allah Ta'ala. He was not bound to the claim of Ibn Taymiyyah that the people of intellect were in total agreement that existence is divided into pre-eternal and contingent, because according to al-Ashari, this categorization is correct, though its correctness is not conditioned on there being a sharing in a real mental meaning or an external referent. Rather, it is enough that there be a sharing in real incidental meanings in the mind. Based on this brief clarification, it should be clear to you the extent of Ibn Taymiyyah's fallacies in this small passage, as well as al-Ashari's protection from numerous fanciful ideals and the doctrines of blameworthy innovators, such as anthropomorphism, oneness of being, resemblance, and other false doctrines from the philosophic schools. After Ibn Taymiyyah refuted these groups, he went on to explain the stance of his doctrine toward non-specific figurative interpretation,
which is a
tafweed,
tafweed. Right.
literally relegating.
We didn't forget the meaning of tafweed. That means to affirm that those attributes that were related in the Quran and the Sunnah while leaving the reality of their meaning to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala.
Undoubtedly, this is an important issue for those who focus on the science of divine oneness and theology. Before we cite Ibn Taymiyyah's conclusion regarding tafweed, we must first explain the meaning of it according to those who believe in it.
No.
Do those who
So
believe
we talked about a ta'wil in relation to al-muhkam wal mutashabih. Now, the concept of tafweed.
Do those who believe in tafweed mean that we do not understand any meaning whatsoever from the Quranic verses? Do they actually believe that tafweed is nothing more than reading a verse without understanding anything from it, general or specific? Is this really the doctrine of tafweed? If we presented someone who believes in tafweed the verse, Allah Ta'ala's yad is above their hands, and asked him,
Yadallahi fawqa aydihim. Yadallahi fawqa aydihim. What page are we on?
page 145,
Okay.
third paragraph, last sentence.
Mhm.
What do you understand from this? Do you think he would say, I only read the words and I do not understand anything from it whatsoever? We are absolutely certain that no one on the face of the earth who knows anything of the Arabic language would answer in such a way, including those who believe in tafweed. Ibn Taymiyyah ascribed this view to the people of tafweed even though they do not believe in it. This mistaken view implies that there are some Quranic verses which address us and in which we must believe, yet we understand absolutely nothing of their meaning. This mistaken view implies that we are only ordered to have faith in expressions. It is apparent that this view is unacceptable to the people of intellect. The default position is that every complete sentence must have a meaning if others are addressed with speech. Then those addressed must be able to understand it. That is, of course, if the addresser is wise. It is far removed from wisdom for someone to address a person with words he neither understands nor is able to comprehend. It is another issue altogether if the addressee intends for the one addressed to submit himself to words without understanding of them, but that is an exception to the commonly held meaning of address. To address someone with a meaningful and complete sentence, the sentence must indicate a proper meaning with regards to the speaker. The primary intent is to make the addressee understand the information provided by the speaker. So it is contrary to wisdom for someone to address another with incomprehensible speech.
Mhm.
According to the people of intellect, an expression can be understood from two levels: detailed, tafsili, and general, ijmali. A detailed understanding is when one understands every part of a sentence and what each part indicates. A
Mhm.
general understanding is when one understands a general meaning taken from the sentence as a whole. A detailed understanding is one in which the listener grasps both the general meaning of what is said as well as the details it contains, and is able to take each part of the sentence and understand it in light of the whole sentence. The one who possesses a general understanding neither affirms with certainty nor negates what is beyond the general meaning. It is seemingly apparent, however, that such a person does negate, although it is not in an unequivocal manner. One who possesses a detailed understanding expounds upon the detailed meanings which are understood, establishes other plausible meanings, and negates meanings that are not possible. Practical implication of the way of nonspecific figurative interpretation and specific figurative interpretation. In the way of tafweed, in light of
Is
the
that the end
verse,
of the subject sentence there? That's a new paragraph.
yes, this is a new
Let's
section
let's pause
altogether.
there. What page is wrong?
Page 146, the section at the bottom.
Wrong way. All right, let's stop right there. Inshallah, we'll pick it up tomorrow. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. All right, where am I at? Okay, good. All right, let me take this. We're good with the reading. So if you need to exit, may Allah reward you and thank you very much. Today at 6:30, we'll continue in our reading the book Al-Sunnah al-Asha'ira. Today at 6:30, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, let me see this one. They would challenge us by saying, why would Allah use language that is understood apparently, only for us to say it does not mean that? If the Quran is making clear, why do we keep denying the apparent meaning? Otherwise, we're claiming that Allah is using language that means something completely different from what we understand. Why would he do that? Number one, what would be problematic of saying that it's apparent is that you're talking about two distinct realities. You're talking about the reality of Allah and the reality of created things. So while Allah uses language and shared words, he already told us, "Laysa kamithlihi shay," that no one resembles or nothing resembles him. So the meanings that we understand from language when applied to created things that don't resemble or are not like the creator of those things, then how would that be something that you could not understand? You understand the meaning. No one denies that Allah is attributed with an attribute. That's clear. But is his attribute the same as ours? No. So if you understand literally in language, you're talking about literally in relation to created things, but you're attributing those words to the Creator. And they cannot be equal. They cannot be the same. Because when you say apparently, you're talking about in relation to created things, not in relation to the Creator, if you understand. So you're talking about two different realities. So the applying of the reality meanings that apply to created things, you can't transfer that to the Creator. And if you want to go in more detail about that, that's why Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah clear Allah from being a substance, an attribute of a substance, or a body, or a particle, an attribute of a particle, or a body. A jawhar, an arad, or a jism. That's why they clear Allah from that. Because all of those meanings, when you say apparently, apply to those created elements. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like none of them. So those meanings would not apply to Allah. And Allah knows best. In terms of laysa kamithlihi shay'un to them, according to Ibn Taymiyyah, he denied a tamthil, absolutely, likeness, but allowed a type of resemblance, which is negated. Where Ahl Sunnah understood a negation from that verse of likeness and resemblance. Is these issues clear for everyone? I ask clear because I know there's a lot of things in this that we have to unpack, and this book can be a little detailed, and we got to build upon that. There are other books that I would like to start with, but sometimes we're learning to be patient with our levels of study, right? You know, some of us, we have to go up to come down, right? Go to a more advanced text, then come back to a simple text that makes it clear. And also with repetition, it helps. Are there any other questions? Please feel free to ask. It'll take a couple minutes. I'll take them if there are questions related to what we're talking about. Allah. I mean, I think what sometimes we miss all of the discussion relates to ultimately a decision you have to make. And I think sometimes we're trying to reconcile irreconcilable things, right? The belief of Ibn Taymiyyah does not match the belief of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So even though the words are shared, the meanings that he applied to the words and the verses in the hadith have a different, completely different understanding from what the Ash'ari mean. So ultimately, you have to make a decision into what is right and what is wrong. They cannot be reconciled. I think sometimes we need to keep that in mind, because we want it all to be just make sense, but it don't. It's two different beliefs, and you have to decide which one is correct. It's not the same. The Wahhabiyya, Salafiyya, who follow the ideas of Ibn Taymiyyah, have a distinctly different set of beliefs than Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, Al-Asha'ira wal Maturidiyya. There's two different beliefs. They're not the same. We don't believe the same thing. And you have to identify that and then decide which is correct. You did that already with other groups. You don't believe Allah came in the person of a man, right? Even though there are people who say we Muslim and they carry that conviction. You already decided that another man is not a prophet after Allah, after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of no type. But there are people who claim to be Muslim who say that. There are some people who claim to be Muslim who liken Allah to his creation. You have to decide within yourself, do you accept that or not? No matter what another says, that's not permissible to believe, you have to decide that. All we can do is give you the information, and you have to decide the truthfulness of the information. I think that's a decision that we realize ultimately you have to make. You trying to reason. I remember one of my teachers said something to me. He said, do you expect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to answer every imagination of the imaginer? No. Allah gives general principles by which you understand things, not in detailed. So we don't have to say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not this bottle. Allah is not this eyeglass case. Allah is not this cup, right? Allah is not these keys. Why? When Allah says there is nothing like him, we know this bottle is like this glass case. This glass case is like this cup. This cup is like these keys. I am like all of them. Allah is no sharing with none of those items I just mentioned. There's a general negation that encompasses many details. Simple. This item and this item is similar. They're not exactly the same, but they resemble. They have a height, they have a length, they have a width, they have a color, they have a shape, they have a form, they exist with a time, they exist within place. Allah is not like that. I share with all of these items. We're the same in some aspects. Allah is not like us in any aspect. Is that clear? That's the belief of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And the words that are shared are only by words, not meanings. Simple. Whether you physically make that or mentally make that in your mind, if you make Allah resemble his creation in any way, you have been misguided. Simple. And that doesn't entail negating his attributes. You follow? Any other questions, or are we done? We clear? This is going to be a process. We're actually deconstructing ideas that have become widespread in our communities. And it's going to take time. But we need to continue to work. You know, we need to continue. We can't get tired. even though the work can be tiresome. We can't get tired, even the work can be tiresome, even though the work can be tiresome. We got to keep strutting along. Okay. Inshallah, we'll see you tonight at 6:30. May Allah reward you. Barakallahu bikum wa jazakum Allahu khaira wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.